The smoke rose high above the quiet Denver neighborhood that evening. Michael Cooper was walking home from picking up his daughter's medicine when he heard the screams. A house was on fire, and someone was trapped inside. Without thinking twice, this single dad ran straight into the flames. He found her in the kitchen, barely conscious. Carrying her to safety, Michael had no idea he'd just rescued Alexandra Bennett, a billionaire worth millions who'd been living undercover, trying to escape her wealthy world. She was searching for something real, something genuine. Instead, she found a hero who risked everything to save a stranger. What happens when Alexandra realizes the only way to thank her hero might end up destroying his simple, beautiful life? Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from. And if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. Michael Cooper's day always began at 5:30 a.m., exactly 17 minutes before his ancient coffee maker sputtered to life. The quiet moments before Emma woke up were sacred. Time to review her medication schedule, check the monthly budget, and steel himself for another day of keeping all the plates spinning. This morning, his hands still smelled faintly of smoke, and his throat felt raw. The events of last night seemed almost dreamlike, except for the singed edges of Emma's prescription bag sitting on the kitchen counter. He'd have to call in a refill, and another expense he hadn't planned for this month. "Daddy?" Emma's voice drifted down the hallway of their modest ranch house, followed by the soft padding of her feet. At 8 years old, she moved with a carefulness that no child should have to learn, each step measured and deliberate. "In the kitchen, sunshine," he called back, already reaching for her morning vitamins and the apple juice she'd only drink if it was room temperature. She appeared in the doorway, clutching her latest masterpiece, a crayon drawing on construction paper. Her dark curls were a wild nest, exactly like her mother's had been. The thought, as always, came with its familiar ache. "I made this in art therapy yesterday," she said, holding up the picture. "It's our family." Michael took the drawing, his heart catching at the simple scene. Two figures stood holding hands in front of a house, one tall, one small. A yellow sun beamed down on them, and flowers dotted the ground. No empty space, where a mother should be. Emma had never known to leave one. "It's beautiful, Em. Should we put it on the fridge?" She shook her head, suddenly serious. "No, I want you to take it to school with you. Ms. Martinez says we should surround ourselves with things that make us happy. And you make me happy, Daddy." Michael swallowed hard, carefully setting down the drawing to lift his daughter into a hug. She felt so light in his arms, too light for her age. But her grip around his neck was strong. "You make me happy too, sunshine. More than anything in the world." He set her down gently. "Now how about some breakfast? We've got time for pancakes." Emma's face lit up. "With blueberries? Is there any other way?" He reached for the mixing bowl, already calculating if they had enough milk to last through the week if he used some. Now, the mental math of parenthood never stopped, each decision a careful balance of joy versus necessity. As he mixed the batter, Emma sat at their small kitchen table, legs swinging, rattling off facts about the solar system. His little scientist, always curious, always learning despite everything her body threw at her. She hadn't let her condition dim her spark, and Michael was determined not to let it dim her future. "Did you know that Venus spins backwards compared to all the other planets?" she asked, watching him flip the first pancake. "I didn't know that," he lied, having heard this particular fact at least a dozen times before. "Tell me more," she launched into an elaborate explanation while he finished cooking, her enthusiasm infectious. These were the moments that made it all worthwhile. The double shifts he picked up at school tutoring, the careful budgeting, the endless insurance battles. For her, he'd move mountains or run into burning buildings. The memory of last night surfaced again. The woman he'd carried out, she'd been so still in his arms. He hadn't stayed long after the paramedics arrived. Emma's medication couldn't wait. But he'd seen her eyes flutter open just before he left, heard her whispered, "Thank you." "Daddy, you're burning the pancake." Michael startled back to the present, quickly rescuing the slightly charred breakfast. "Just adding some extra flavor," he joked, sliding it onto his own plate and giving Emma the perfect ones. They ate together in their comfortable routine, Michael checking her homework while she carefully cut her pancakes into precise triangles. The morning sun streamed through their small kitchen window, catching the dust motes in its beam. Another day beginning. Another chance to get it right. "Ready for school?" he asked as she finished the last bite. Emma nodded, then hesitated. Do you think the lady from the fire is okay?" Michael smiled at his daughter's compassion, so much like her mother's. "I'm sure she is, sunshine. The paramedics were taking good care of her." "Maybe we could make her a get-well card," Emma suggested, already reaching for her ever-present drawing supplies. "That's a wonderful idea. But right now, we need to get you to your morning checkup. We can work on the card later, okay?" Emma nodded bravely, though he saw the flicker of apprehension cross her face. 8 years old, and already too familiar with doctors' offices and waiting rooms. Michael picked up her drawing from the counter, carefully sliding it into his worn leather messenger bag. A reminder of what really mattered, what he was fighting for every single day. Just another morning in the Cooper household, where love made up for everything they didn't have, and hope was as much a part of their breakfast as blueberry pancakes. Alexandra Bennett sat in her modest rental home, staring at the newspaper clippings she kept hidden in the back of her desk drawer. Her own obituary, published 2 years ago, stared back at her. Tech billionaire Alexandra Bennett, presumed dead. In private plane crash. The photo showed her as she'd been then. Sleek business suit, perfectly styled hair, practiced smile that never quite reached her eyes. Now, running her fingers through her unstyled brown hair, dyed from its signature. Platinum blonde, she barely recognized that woman. The smoke inhalation had left her voice raspy, but she was alive, thanks to a stranger who'd rushed into a burning building without a second thought. Her hand trembled slightly as she reached for her phone, opening the browser to search Michael Cooper, Denver teacher. A few clicks revealed his LinkedIn profile. High school physics teacher, 10 years experience, graduated summa cum laude from Colorado State. The kind of ordinary, accomplished life she'd been craving when she'd orchestrated her disappearance. The fire had started so stupidly, a faulty wire in her kitchen of all things. After spending millions on her elaborate vanishing act, she'd nearly been undone by defective wiring in a rental home. The irony wasn't lost on her. Her phone buzzed with a text from her only confidant Marcus, her former head of security who'd helped arrange her death and now managed her fortune in secret. "Are you all right? Fire made local news. Cover compromised." She typed back quickly. "I'm fine. Saved by a local teacher. Cover intact." Marcus's response was immediate. "Need extraction?" Alexandra. Alice, she reminded herself. She was Alice Miller now, looked around her small living room. The second-hand furniture, the stack of library books, the half-finished mug of tea she'd actually brewed herself instead of having it, brought to her by household staff. For the first time in 2 years, she felt truly present in her own life. "No," she replied. "I'm staying." She could almost hear Marcus's disapproving sigh through the phone. He'd never fully understood why one of the world's wealthiest women would choose to live like this. How could she explain that every genuine smile from a neighbor, every casual conversation at the grocery store felt more valuable than any merger she'd ever overseen? The local news played quietly on her laptop, showing footage of the fire. There he was, Michael Cooper, being interviewed briefly before hurrying away from the cameras. "I just did what anyone would do," he said, looking uncomfortable with the attention. Then, more urgently, "I need to pick up my daughter's prescription." His daughter. Alice. She forced herself to think of herself as Alice. Had done enough research since last night to know the basics. Emma Cooper, age 8, being treated for a rare autoimmune condition. Single father, mother deceased 5 years ago. Teacher's salary stretched thin by medical bills. She clicked through public records, careful to cover her digital tracks, as Marcus had taught her. Property tax assessments, medical liens, a GoFundMe from 3 years ago for Emma's treatments. The familiar itch to solve problems with money crept up her spine. One phone call to Marcus and she could eliminate every financial worry this man and his daughter had ever had, but that wasn't why she'd walked away from her old life. Money hadn't solved her own problems. The emptiness, the constant performance, the knowledge that no one saw her, only her net worth. She'd had to die to finally start living. The smell of smoke still lingered in her hair as she stood, walking to her kitchen to make another cup of tea. Such a simple act, one she'd never done for herself in her previous life. Her hands had been saved from the fire, though her expensive manicure was ruined. Another small death of her former self. Through her window, she could see her neighbors, going about their morning routines. Karen from next door walking her dog. The Garcia kids waiting for their school bus. A normal life, the kind she'd dreamed of during all those board meetings and charity galas. And now, there was Michael Cooper, who had literally carried her out of danger without knowing or caring who she was. Who'd seen smoke and heard screams and simply acted, the opposite of the calculated moves and strategic decisions that had defined her former existence. She pulled up the local school district website, finding the volunteer application form. It was time, she decided, to start giving back in ways that didn't involve writing checks. Besides, she had a legitimate reason to want to thank the man who'd saved her life. Alice smiled as she began filling out the form, ignoring the small voice that warned her she was playing with fire again, this time metaphorically. She'd spent 2 years building this new life, crafting this simpler version of herself. Meeting Michael Cooper properly, getting involved, it was a risk. But for the first time since she'd walked away from Alexandra Bennett's life, she felt truly awakened. Perhaps it had taken nearly dying to remember how to really live. 3 days after the fire, Michael found a note in his school mailbox. The edges were slightly singed, as if the paper itself had been rescued from the flames. The handwriting was precise but unpracticed, like someone who usually typed everything. "Thank you doesn't begin to cover it, but it's a start. Would you let me buy you a coffee?" Alice Miller, the woman from the fire. She'd left her phone number and drawn a small flame next to her signature, a touch of humor that made him smile despite himself. Michael tucked the note into his pocket, next to Emma's drawing, and tried to focus on his next class. But physics formulas kept blurring into memories of that night. The weight of her in his arms, the whispered thank you before the paramedics took over. He'd gone over it a dozen times with Emma during her late-night anxiety spells, reassuring her that yes, the lady was okay, and no, Daddy hadn't been too scared. "Mr. Cooper?" Jason Martinez's voice broke through his thoughts. "Is everything okay? You've written the same equation 3 times. Michael blinked at the whiteboard. Sure enough, Efma stared back at him in triple vision. "Just testing if you were paying attention," he recovered smoothly, earning a few chuckles. "Now, who can tell me how we apply this to real-world situations?" Hands shot up, and he lost himself in teaching again. This was comfortable. This was what he knew. Not running into burning buildings or accepting thank-you coffees from mysterious women, but after class, he found himself pulling out his phone. Emma had a good day yesterday. Her numbers were stable, and his neighbor, Mrs. Chen, had already agreed to watch her after school. Maybe. His fingers hovered over the keypad. When was the last time he'd done anything like this? Sarah had been gone 5 years, and dating as a single dad with a medically complex child wasn't exactly simple. "Just coffee," he muttered to himself, typing quickly before he could change his mind. "It's just being polite." Her response came almost immediately. "Copper Cup Cafe 4:30. I promise not to burst into flames this time." Another joke about the fire. Something in his chest loosened slightly. He found himself smiling as he typed back, "See you there. I'll bring a fire extinguisher just in case." The rest of the school day passed in a blur of momentum calculations and lab safety protocols. Before he knew it, he was walking into the small cafe, the bell above the door announcing his arrival with cheerful betrayal. She sat in a corner booth, wearing a simple sweater and jeans, her brown hair falling naturally around her face. Nothing like the soot-covered woman he'd carried out of the fire, but he recognized her immediately. Something about the way she held herself, both present and slightly apart, like she was still getting used to occupying her own space. "Mr. Cooper," she stood, extending her hand. "Or can I call you Michael?" "Michael's fine." He took her hand, noting the slight tremor in her grip. "How are you feeling, Miss Miller?" "Alice, please, and I'm okay, thanks to you." She gestured to the seat across from her. "I already ordered your coffee. The barista said you always get the dark roast black. I hope that's okay." He slid into the booth, surprised. "You asked about my coffee order." A faint blush colored her cheeks. "I may have been working up the courage to do this for a couple of days. The staff here is very friendly and chatty." Right on cue, the barista brought their drinks, his black coffee, and what looked like a simple green tea for her. No fancy lattes or complicated orders. Something about that detail stuck with him. "I wanted to thank you properly," she continued, wrapping her hands around her mug. "What you did? I still can't believe a stranger would risk their life like that." Michael shrugged, uncomfortable with the praise. Anyone would have done the same. "No," she said with surprising firmness. "They wouldn't. I know that better than most." Something flickered across her face, there and gone before he could read it. "But you did, and then you just left, before the news crews came, before anyone could make a fuss." "I had to pick up my daughter's prescription," he explained, then wondered why he was sharing personal details with a stranger. But she didn't feel quite like a stranger anymore. "Emma, right?" At his startled look, she added quickly, "Small neighborhood, people talk, especially about local heroes." Michael took a long sip of his coffee. Perfectly prepared, he had to admit. "I'm no hero, just a dad who teaches physics and sometimes makes questionable decisions about running into burning buildings." She laughed, and the sound seemed to surprise her as much as him. Natural, unguarded. "Well, this is one questionable decision I'm very grateful for." She paused, seeming to wrestle with something. "I saw Emma at the bus stop this morning. She was telling everyone about her dad, the firefighter." Michael groaned. "Great. Now, I'll have to explain to my students why Mr. Cooper isn't actually qualified to teach fire safety." "I don't know." Alice's eyes sparkled with amusement. "You seem pretty qualified in practical applications." Their conversation flowed easily after that, moving from the fire to his teaching to Emma's fascination with space. Alice listened intently, asking thoughtful questions that showed she was really engaging, not just being polite. "She sounds remarkable," Alice said when he described Emma's latest science project. "You must be very proud." "She's everything," Michael said simply. Then, realizing how that might sound on what might be construed as a coffee date, he added, "I mean, no, I understand," Alice cut in softly. "She's your world. That's really beautiful, actually." Something in her tone made him look closer. There was a loneliness there, carefully hidden but visible if you knew where to look. He recognized it. He'd seen it in his own mirror often enough. "What about you?" he asked. "What brings you to our neighborhood?" She tensed slightly, then deliberately relaxed. "Looking for something real," she said finally. "Something genuine." She glanced at her watch and stood abruptly. "I should go. Thank you for the company, and, for saving my life." "Wait," Michael found himself saying. "Would you, Emma's been worried about you. Would you like to come over for dinner sometime? She'd love to know you're okay." The invitation surprised them both. Alice's eyes widened, and for a moment he thought she'd refuse. Then her face softened into a genuine smile. "I'd like that," she said. "I'd like that very much." Michael stood at the front of his classroom, surrounded by a forest of raised hands. The essay question he'd posed about everyday heroes had sparked more enthusiasm than he'd expected. What makes someone a hero? He'd written on the board. Followed. Well, do you use real-world examples and physics principles to support your answer? Mr. Cooper, Jason waved his paper eagerly. I wrote about momentum and split-second decisions. Like how in that fire, you had to calculate risk factors instantly. Michael suppressed a groan. Ever since the incident, his students had been relentless with their questions and theories. But before he could redirect the discussion, a knock at the classroom door caught everyone's attention. Alice stood in the doorway, wearing a volunteer badge and carrying a stack of science lab materials. Their eyes met, and something electric passed between them before Michael cleared his throat. Class, this is Miss Miller. She'll be helping with our lab preparations. He turned to the board, trying to ignore the knowing looks his students exchanged. Now back to forces and motion. But the universe, it seemed, had other plans. As Alice moved between the lab tables, setting up equipment, Emma's latest blood test results buzzed on his phone. The numbers weren't good. His voice faltered. Mid-equation, Alice looked up sharply as if she could sense the shift in his mood. For a moment, he was back in that burning house, choking on smoke, fighting against time. Only now the enemy wasn't fire. It was his daughter's own immune system. Mr. Cooper. Ashley, his best student, called out softly. Are you okay? He forced a smile. Just fine. Let's talk about the relationship between force and acceleration. After class, Alice lingered, organizing beakers with careful precision. Bad news? She asked quietly. Michael checked his phone again, hoping the numbers had somehow changed. Emma's inflammation markers are up. We need to adjust her treatment plan. Is there anything I can do? The genuine concern in her voice made his chest tight. Just distract me? Tell me why you really volunteered here. It can't be the exciting world of high school physics. Alice's hands stilled on the glassware. Maybe I wanted to understand what makes someone run into a burning building to save a stranger. And what have you concluded? That heroes aren't born from grand gestures, she said, picking up one of the student essays he'd left on his desk. They're made in small moments, daily choices, like a father teaching physics while worrying about his daughter's test results. Her words hit him hard. He turned away, pretending to erase the board, but really hiding the emotion on his face. When he turned back, Alice was reading through the essays, a strange expression on her face. Your students really admire you, she said. Listen to this. 1. A hero isn't someone who's never afraid. It's someone who acts despite their fear, who calculates the risks and moves forward anyway, because doing nothing would be worse than doing something dangerous. Michael recognized Maria's handwriting. The quiet girl who'd lost her mother to cancer last year, who sometimes stayed after class to talk about anything but physics. They're good kids, he said. They see more than we think they do. Yes, Alice agreed softly. They do. She hesitated, then added, Emma's appointment. When is it? Tomorrow afternoon. I'll need to find a substitute for my last 2 classes. I could cover, she offered quickly, then seemed to catch herself. I mean, I have a physics degree. It's on my volunteer application. Michael raised an eyebrow. A physics degree. For office work. Something flickered across her face. I had a different life before, but that's not who I am anymore. Before he could probe further, his phone buzzed again. The school nurse. Emma wasn't feeling well. Go, Alice said, reading his expression. I'll clean up here. He grabbed his bag, pausing at the door. Alice, thank you for understanding. She gave him a sad smile. Understanding is easy. It's being understood that's rare. The weight of those words followed him down the hallway, mixing with worry about Emma and questions about the mysterious woman who seemed to be weaving herself into their lives. In the nurse's office, he found Emma curled up on the cot, her face pale but brightening when she saw him. Daddy, did you know Miss Miller has a telescope? She told me during lunch. A real one, not just the little one like we have. Michael blinked. You had lunch with Miss Miller? Emma nodded enthusiastically, then winced at the movement. She saw me in the cafeteria and asked if I wanted to see pictures of the Andromeda Galaxy. Did you know it's going to crash into our galaxy in 4 billion years? Despite his worry, Michael smiled. Trust his daughter to be discussing cosmic collisions while having an immune flare. She said maybe we could look through her telescope sometime, Emma continued. If you say it's okay. Is it okay, Daddy? The hope in her voice was painful. When was the last time Emma had been excited about something that wasn't related to hospitals or treatments? We'll see, sunshine. First, let's get you home and resting. As he carried her to the car, he caught sight of Alice through his classroom window, still organizing lab materials. She looked up, their eyes met, and she pressed her hand against the glass in a silent gesture of support. Later that night, after Emma had finally fallen asleep, Michael found himself reading through the rest of the student essays. One line kept jumping out at him. Sometimes the bravest thing isn't rushing into danger. Sometimes it's letting someone else in when you're scared they'll see how broken you really are. He looked at his sleeping daughter, then at his phone where Alice's number was saved. His finger hovered over the call button before he set it aside. Some risks, he decided, were harder to calculate than running into a burning building. In her small rental home, Alexandra stared at the burner phone Marcus had insisted she keep. Its screen displayed a string of encrypted messages about her foundation's latest acquisitions. Billions in motion, with a few taps of her finger. Next to it lay a permission slip for a school field trip she'd volunteered to chaperone. The contrast made her laugh quietly. The numbers don't look good, Marcus's message read. Bennett Biotech's new autoimmune treatment is stalling in trials. Stock's dropping. Want me to sell? Her fingers froze over the keypad. Bennett Biotech, her company. Though the world thought it was in receivership after her death, the company that had been researching treatments for conditions exactly like Emma's. Don't sell, she typed back. Double our position and get me everything you can on the latest autoimmune trials. Quietly, she switched to her regular phone, the one with Alice Miller's modest contacts list. Michael had texted, Emma's asking about the telescope again. No pressure, but the dual screens felt like her life now, split between power she couldn't reveal and happiness she couldn't quite trust. She'd spent the afternoon helping grade physics quizzes, watching Michael explain gravity to teenagers while quietly moving millions through offshore accounts. A knock at her door made her jump. She quickly tucked the burner phone away and checked the security camera she'd insisted on installing. Old habits died hard. It was Karen from next door, holding a casserole dish. Alice, I made too much. Lasagna again, Karen called through the door. Thought you might like some. Alexandra. Alice, she reminded herself firmly, opened the door with her practiced small smile. The one that said friendly neighbor rather than woman who could buy this entire block without blinking. That's so thoughtful, she said, accepting the dish. Would you like to come in for tea? Karen beamed. In the 2 years since Alexandra had become Alice, her neighbor had appointed herself unofficial welcome wagon and local news source. Usually, Alexandra found ways to politely minimize these visits. But today, she needed intelligence that only Karen's comprehensive gossip network could provide. Did you hear about poor Emma Cooper? Karen settled into the armchair, accepting a mug of tea. Such a shame about the latest test results. Mary at the pharmacy says the new treatment plan is completely out of reach with their insurance. Alexandra's hand tightened on her own mug. How out of reach? Thousands a month from what I hear. That sweet man works so hard already, tutoring extra hours, selling old textbooks online. Jenny at the bank says he's inquired about a second mortgage, but with the medical liens, each detail felt like a physical blow. Alexandra had known things were tight for the Coopers, but it's not right, Karen continued, shaking her head. Did you know he hasn't bought himself new clothes in years? Everything goes to Emma's care, and that child, bless her heart, trying to sell her drawings to help with bills. The burner phone felt heavy in Alexandra's pocket. One call to Marcus, and she could set up a grant, a scholarship, an anonymous donation. She had billions at her disposal and couldn't use any of it without risking everything. The school's thinking of doing a fundraiser, Karen added, though Michael's too proud to accept charity. Mary says he returned the last batch of donated grocery gift cards. After Karen left, Alexandra paced her living room. The lasagna sat untouched on her counter. She'd give it to the Garcia family later, knowing Karen would be pleased her cooking helped a single mother of 3. Her burner phone buzzed again. Marcus had sent the research files on the new treatment, their protocols. She spent hours reading through medical jargon, understanding for the first time exactly what Emma and Michael were facing. Her regular phone lit up with another text from Michael. "Emma's feeling better. She drew you a picture of the Andromeda Galaxy." The image loaded, a swirl of colors, surprisingly accurate for an 8-year-old. In the corner, Emma had written, "Thank you for being Daddy's friend. He smiles more now." Alexandra sat heavily on her couch, both phones clutched in her hands. The woman who could move markets with a text message fought back tears over a child's drawing. Another message from Marcus. "Interesting development. Small research firm claims breakthrough in juvenile autoimmune treatments. Looking to be acquired. Want me to investigate?" She stared at the message for a long time. Finally she typed, "Buy them, whatever it takes. And Marcus, I need you to set up a new charitable foundation, completely separate from everything else. Independence Medical Research Trust. Make it untraceable." His response was immediate. "This is about the fire, isn't it? About them?" "No," she lied. "It's about doing the right thing." She looked out her window at the Cooper house down the street. Michael's car was in the driveway, its worn paint visible even in the evening light. Through an upstairs window, she could see shadows moving. Probably Michael reading Emma her bedtime story. Her burner phone buzzed one final time. "Marcus, you're playing a dangerous game." "I know," she typed back, "but for the first time in my life, I'm playing for the right reasons." She picked up Emma's drawing again, running her fingers over the careful lines. The real Andromeda Galaxy was on a collision course with the Milky Way. In billions of years, 2 separate systems would crash together, either destroying everything or creating something entirely new. Alexandra wondered which way her own collision course would end. The hospital bills arrived on a Tuesday, their red, urgent stamps like accusations. Michael spread them across his kitchen table after Emma had gone to bed, the numbers blurring together in the dim light. Even with insurance, the new treatment plan would cost more than his annual salary. His phone lit up with a text from Alice. "Couldn't sleep. Saw your light on. Need company?" He hesitated, looking at the mess of bills and collection notices. Pride warred with loneliness. "Rough night," he typed back. "But you don't need to." A soft knock interrupted his message. Alice stood on his porch, holding 2 cups of tea. "I thought you might need this," she said, handing him a steaming mug. Her eyes caught the papers spread across his table, but she didn't comment. "Emma had another episode at school today," he found himself saying. "Her body's rejecting the current treatment, the new protocol." He gestured helplessly at the bills. Alice picked up one of the letters, her face unreadable. "How much time do you have to decide? The doctor says we need to start within 2 weeks for the best results. After that..." He couldn't finish the sentence. "What about a second mortgage or..." "Already tried. Medical liens make me too high risk." Michael ran a hand through his hair. "I'm considering selling the house. We could get an apartment somewhere closer to the hospital, maybe." "No." Alice's voice was sharp, surprising them both. She softened it immediately. "Emma needs stability, her home, her room, her neighborhood. There has to be another way." "I've tried everything," Michael's voice cracked. "Every grant, every program. I even looked into experimental trials, but the waiting lists..." Alice's hand twitched toward her pocket, where Michael noticed she always kept her phone. She seemed to be fighting some internal battle. "What about crowdfunding?" she suggested finally. The community would help. You must know that. I can't. Ask people who are struggling themselves to help save a child's life. Alice stood abruptly, pacing his small kitchen. To support someone who's given so much to their kids, their school, their community. Someone who runs into burning buildings to save strangers. That was different. Why? Because it was physical danger instead of financial. Because it was someone else's life instead of yours and Emma's. Her intensity startled him. This wasn't the quiet, composed Alice he'd come to know. There was something almost desperate in her eyes. There are people who want to help, she continued more softly. People with the means to make a difference. Would it really be so terrible to let them? Before he could respond, a small voice called from upstairs. "Daddy?" They both turned to see Emma at the top of the stairs, pale and swaying slightly. Michael reached her just as her legs gave out. "I don't feel good," she whispered. And then her eyes rolled back. What followed was a blur of motion and fear. Alice calling 911 while Michael cradled his daughter, the ambulance lights painting his quiet street in harsh reds and blues. The paramedics asking questions he struggled to answer through his panic. "BP's dropping," one EMT called out. "We need to move now." "I'll drive." Alice appeared at his side, car keys in hand. "You ride with her. I'll meet you there." In the emergency room, Michael paced while doctors huddled around his daughter's bed. Alice sat quietly in a corner, making occasional phone calls she wouldn't let him hear. Hours passed in a haze of medical terms and growing fear. Finally, Emma's doctor pulled him aside. "The inflammation is attacking her kidneys now." Without the new treatment protocol, she didn't need to finish the sentence. Michael could read the prognosis in her eyes. He returned to the waiting room to find Alice arguing intensely but quietly into her phone. "I don't care what it takes. Make it happen, now." She hung up quickly when she saw him. "The doctor says—" His voice failed. Alice stood and wrapped her arms around him, letting him break down against her shoulder. "It's going to be okay," she whispered. "I promise. Whatever it takes, Emma's going to be okay." Something in her voice made him pull back to look at her. There was a certainty there that didn't match their desperate situation. But before he could question it, another doctor appeared with admission papers and insurance forms. The amount due before treatment could begin made his vision blur. He gripped the clipboard so hard his knuckles went white. "Mr. Cooper," a hospital administrator approached. "Could you come with me for a moment? There's something we need to discuss about Emma's case." He followed numbly, expecting more bad news. Instead, the administrator pulled up a computer screen, showing Emma's file. "It seems your daughter has been accepted into a new research program," she said. "The Independence Medical Research Trust. They've approved full funding for her treatment, retroactive to admission." Michael stared at the screen. "That's not possible. I didn't apply for any. The selection was automatic based on her case. In profile, it's a new initiative focusing on juvenile autoimmune conditions. Quite fortunate timing, actually." He returned to the waiting room in a daze. Alice was gone, but a note in her neat handwriting lay on his chair. "Had to take care of something urgent. Emma's going to be fine now. Trust that some things in life are meant to work out." He looked at the note, then at his daughter's room, where doctors were already preparing to start the new treatment protocol, a treatment that had been financially impossible an hour ago. The memory of Alice's phone calls nagged at him. Her certainty, the timing of everything. For the first time, he began to wonder exactly who Alice Miller really was. 2 days after Emma's emergency, Michael sat in the hospital cafeteria, staring at his laptop screen. Something about the Independence Medical Research Trust kept nagging at him. The timing was too perfect, the paperwork too clean, the acceptance too quick. A newspaper lay forgotten beside his coffee, its business section open to an article about tech companies. His eyes kept drifting to a photograph he'd skimmed earlier. A blonde woman in an elegant suit, standing in front of the Bennett Biotech logo. Something about her face. His phone buzzed. Alice. How's Emma today? He looked at the message for a long moment, then opened a new browser tab, searched. Alexandra Bennett, Tech CEO. The results loaded, and his coffee went cold. There she was, the same eyes, the same subtle smile, though with platinum blonde hair instead of brown. Alexandra Bennett, tech billionaire and biotech pioneer, presumed dead in a private plane crash 2 years ago. His hands shook as he clicked through image after image. Alice's face stared back at him from charity galas and corporate events, though wearing designer clothes instead of simple sweaters. The woman he'd pulled from the fire, who'd graded physics papers and talked about telescopes with his daughter, was one of the wealthiest people in the world, or had been, before her supposed death. Another article caught his eye. Bennett Biotech announces breakthrough in autoimmune research. The date, yesterday. The pieces fell into place with sickening clarity. The mysterious research trust, the immediate acceptance, the certainty in her voice when she'd promised everything would be okay. His phone buzzed again. Alice. No. Alexandra. Emma's new treatment is looking promising. The doctors just updated her, because she owned the company developing the treatment, because she could probably buy the entire hospital with her pocket change. The newspaper rustled as his hand clenched. Every interaction replayed, in his mind with new context. Her volunteer work at school, her careful deflections about her past. The way she never talked about her job, but seemed to know everything about medical research and corporate finance. He'd invited her into their lives, trusted her, started to feel things he hadn't felt since Sarah died. And it had all been, what? An experiment in playing normal? A billionaire's idea of slumming it? His phone lit up with another message. I brought Emma some books about space. The nurses said visiting hours start at 2. Maybe we could... Michael stood abruptly, his chair scraping against the linoleum. A few cafeteria workers looked up, then quickly away from whatever they saw in his face. The elevator ride to Emma's floor felt endless. He could see Alexandra, through the window of Emma's room, reading something that made his daughter laugh despite the tubes and monitors surrounding her. He paused in the doorway, watching them. Emma's color was better today. The new treatment was working. His daughter was getting better because a billionaire had decided to play guardian angel. Daddy! Emma's face lit up. Alice brought me a book about black holes. Did you know that if you fell into one, time would... Emma, he cut her off gently. Could you give Ms. Miller and me a minute to talk in private? Something in his tone made Alexandra's head snap up. She saw his face and went very still. I'll finish telling you about the black holes later, sweetheart, she said softly, squeezing Emma's hand before following Michael into the hallway. They found an empty consultation room. Michael closed the door and turned to face her, holding up his phone with her old photo displayed. Alexandra Bennett, he said flatly. Interesting reading about your tragic death 2 years ago. She didn't try to deny it, didn't even look surprised, just tired and infinitely sad. I wondered when you'd figure it out, she said quietly. Was any of it real? The words felt like glass in his throat. Or was this all just some rich person's game? Pretending to be normal, playing with people's lives. Michael, the research. Trust? Bennett Biotech's mysterious breakthrough. How long were you manipulating things behind the scenes? I was trying to help. Help? His laugh was harsh. By lying? By making me think... He stopped, ran a hand over his face. God, I'm such an idiot. I actually started to... To what? Her voice was barely a whisper. It doesn't matter now. He turned to leave, then stopped. The treatment for Emma, is it real? Yes. The word was fierce. Everything about the treatment is real. The research, the trials, the results. I would never play games with Emma's life. Just with her father's trust? Alexandra flinched. That's not fair. Fair? He whirled back to face her. Fair is being honest about who you are. Fair is not hiding behind a fake identity while watching someone struggle. Fair is being seen for who you are, not what you own. Her composure cracked. Do you know what it's like? Everyone wanting something from you, never knowing if people care about you or your money? I didn't lie about who I am, Michael. Alice Miller is more real than Alexandra Bennett ever was. You're a billionaire who pretended to die rather than deal with your life. And then you what? Decided to experiment with how the other half lives? I decided to live honestly for once, to make connections that weren't about power or money or influence, to help people in ways that actually matter. By deceiving them, by watching them drown in medical debt while sitting on billions. I helped as soon as I could. Do you think it was easy watching you struggle, knowing I could fix everything with one phone call, but that it would destroy the trust we were building, the real relationship we were? There was nothing real about this relationship, Michael cut her off. Real relationships are built on truth. The words hung between them like smoke from another kind of fire. Alexandra took a step toward him, then stopped herself. Everything I felt was real, she said quietly. Everything I feel for you and Emma. That's the truest thing in my life. Michael looked at her, really looked at her, past the designer, what she probably forgot to stop wearing, past the careful posture that spoke of years of corporate training. She was crying, he realized. Alexandra Bennett, tech billionaire, was standing in a hospital consultation room, crying over a physics teacher and his sick daughter. I have to go, he said finally. Emma's waiting. Michael, please, thank you for the treatment, for saving my daughter's life, but please, just stay away from us now. He walked out without looking back, leaving Alexandra Bennett alone, with her billions and her good intentions, both of which had just cost her something money couldn't buy. Emma's get-well cards covered every surface of her hospital room, a rainbow of encouragement from classmates, teachers, and neighbors. But one card remained unopened on the windowsill, its elegant handwriting instantly recognizable to Michael. He couldn't bring himself to throw it away, nor to read what Alexandra had written. Daddy, Emma's voice was stronger today, the new treatment already showing promising results. Why hasn't Alice visited? Did she get sick too? Michael adjusted. Her blanket buying time. How do you explain betrayal to an 8-year-old who's already lost too much? Ms. Miller had to take care of some things, Sunshine. But she promised to tell me more about black holes. Emma's lower lip trembled. She promised. Another promise from Alexandra Bennett. Michael's jaw tightened as he reached for the astronomy book she'd left behind, its pages already dog-eared from multiple readings. I can read it with you, he offered. But Emma turned away. It's not the same. Alice makes the funny voices for the scientists. The nurse's station phone rang, and Michael heard the familiar words, Ms. Bennett's office on line 1 about Emma Cooper's treatment protocol. He closed his eyes. Even now, she was pulling strings, monitoring Emma's care from afar. The thought both comforted and infuriated him. His phone buzzed with a text from Karen next door. Channel 7 news crew outside your house. Something about Bennett Biotech's mysterious founder returning from the dead. So it was starting. The carefully constructed piece of their lives shattered by cameras and questions. He could already imagine the headlines. Billionaire's secret life, or tech mogul's double life exposed. Emma's doctor appeared in the doorway, tablet in hand. Mr. Cooper, the latest results are remarkable. The new treatment is exceeding all expectations. Michael nodded numbly. Of course it was. Alexandra wouldn't settle for anything less than miraculous for Emma. The same determination he'd admired in Alice now felt like another manipulation by Alexandra. The Research Foundation wants to document Emma's case, the doctor continued. It could help other children. No, Michael cut her off. No interviews, no documentation, just the treatment. The doctor looked startled but nodded. As she left, Michael caught a glimpse of a familiar figure hurrying past the door. Alexandra's security chief, Marcus, speaking urgently into a phone. Emma had fallen asleep, the astronomy book clutched to her chest. Michael gently extracted it, a piece of paper falling from between its pages. Not a bookmark, but a photograph. Alexandra, Alice, and Emma at the school science fair last week, both laughing as they examined Emma's model of the solar system. The simple joy in their expressions made his chest ache. His phone buzzed. Again, a message from an unknown number. Press contained, hospital secure, no reporters will bother Emma. Even now she was protecting them, or controlling them. The line between care and manipulation had become hopelessly blurred. The unopened card seemed to mock him from the windowsill. What could she possibly say? Sorry I turned out to be a billionaire. Sorry I saved your daughters. Life while lying about everything else. A nurse entered with Emma's evening medication, now branded with Bennett Biotech's logo. Every pill, every treatment, every moment of hope for his daughter's recovery, all of it traced back to Alexandra's deception. Mr. Cooper? The nurse hesitated. There's a delivery for Emma at the front desk. Security checked it. It's a telescope, professional grade. Of course it was, because Alexandra Bennett didn't do anything halfway, did she? Send it back, he said quietly. But Daddy, Emma had woken up. Is it from Alice? She promised. Emma, his voice came out sharper than intended. She's not. Alice isn't who we thought she was. His daughter's face crumpled. Did she lie? Like Tommy in my class, who said he'd be my friend but just wanted to copy my science homework. The innocent comparison nearly broke him. It's complicated, Sunshine. Is that why you're sad? Emma asked. Because I heard you crying last night, when you thought I was sleeping. Michael sat heavily in the chair beside her bed. Sometimes grown-ups make things complicated when they should be simple. Like my immune system attacking itself when it should just protect me. He looked at his daughter, really looked at her. The color returning to her cheeks, the brightness back in her eyes, the future stretching out before her that hadn't existed a week ago. The unopened card caught his eye again. Simple white envelope, his name in her careful handwriting. Not Alexandra Bennett's bold CEO signature, but Alice Miller's thoughtful script. You know what? Emma continued, fiddling with her IV line. When my cells get confused and attack the wrong things, the new medicine helps them remember what they're supposed to do. Maybe grown-ups need medicine like that too, out of the mouths of babes. Michael reached for the card, then stopped. Some things, once broken, couldn't be fixed with money or medicine or even good intentions, could they? The child's bracelet lay on Michael's kitchen table, its colored beads spelling out Alice in Emma's careful pattern. She'd made it during art therapy the day before everything fell apart, planning to give it to the woman who'd sparked her interest in the stars. Now it sat untouched, like everything else connected to Alexandra Bennett. 3 days had passed since the revelation. Emma was responding well enough to the treatment to come home, though the house felt different now, emptier, despite the telescope, still sitting in its unopened box by the front door. He couldn't bring himself to send it back, nor to let Emma use it. The doorbell rang. Michael tensed, expecting another reporter, but through the peephole he saw only Karen, holding her signature. Lasagna. Don't worry, she said when he opened the door. I brought enough for the security team too. Security team? She gestured down the street where 2 discreet but obvious professionals sat in a black SUV. They've been keeping the press away, very polite about it. Even helped Mrs. Garcia with her groceries yesterday. Of course Alexandra would think of that, would quietly protect them even now. You know, Karen continued, setting down the lasagna, I knew who she was the whole time. Michael nearly dropped the plate he was holding. What? Please, I've been following business news since before you were born. Did you think I wouldn't recognize Alexandra Bennett just because she dyed her hair? Why didn't you say anything? Karen's face softened. Because for the first time since I've lived here, that woman looked happy. Really happy. Not CEO photo op happy. She paused. And so did you. She lied to us. Did she? Karen challenged. Or did she just let you see the part of herself she never got to be? Before Michael could respond, Emma's voice called from upstairs. Daddy, can you help me with something? He found her sitting on her bed, surrounded by newspaper clippings. His heart stopped when he saw what they were. articles about Alexandra. Bennett printed from the school library computer. "Did you know she started her company in her garage?" Emma asked, eyes wide. "Like a real scientist. And look, she has a foundation that helps kids like me. She's been doing it for years, even before—" "Emma," he started, not sure what to say. "And she donated all these telescopes to schools and started coding programs for girls and—" Emma's voice cracked. "Why didn't she tell us? Was she scared? We wouldn't like her anymore if we knew she was rich." The question hit Michael like a physical blow. I think maybe she was scared we wouldn't see her. Just her money." "But that's silly," Emma declared with 8-year-old certainty. "We already saw her. She's Alice. She likes tea without sugar and makes funny voices for scientists and always ties her shoelaces with double knots." Michael sat beside his daughter, looking at the articles spread across her bed. There was Alexandra Bennett in her corporate power suits, but he could see Alice in her eyes now, in the way she looked at the children in the hospital photos, in the slight smile as she demonstrated a telescope to a group of students. "She helped make me better, didn't she?" Emma asked quietly. "The new medicine is from her company." "Yes," Michael admitted. She made sure you got the treatment you needed." "Then why are you still mad? You always say actions speak louder than words." From the mouths of babes again. Michael picked up one of the articles, a profile from years ago where Alexandra Bennett talked about losing her own mother to an autoimmune disease, about wanting to change the world through medical research. His phone buzzed. "Marcus, press conference tomorrow. Ms. Bennett will publicly explain her absence. Would appreciate your input on the statement." Another message followed. "She won't mention you or Emma unless you approve. Your privacy is her priority." The bracelet caught his eye again, Emma's gift for a woman who'd given them so much, while asking only to be seen as herself in return. "Do you think," Emma said hesitantly, "we could set up the telescope, just to make sure it works, in case we want to give it back?" Michael looked at his daughter, really looked at her, the healthy color in her cheeks, the bright curiosity in her eyes. The future stretching out before her, made possible by a woman who'd risked everything just to experience real connection. He reached for his phone, then stopped. Some conversations needed to happen, face to face. "Actually," he said, "I think we should deliver this bracelet first. Its owner might want to help us set up that telescope." Emma's face lit up brighter than any star they might see tonight. "Really? Really?" He picked up the bracelet, its beads catching the light. "But first, I need to read a certain card that's been sitting on your hospital windowsill." Sometimes, he realized, the bravest thing wasn't running into a burning building. Sometimes it was opening yourself up to the possibility of getting hurt, because the alternative, missing out on something real and precious, was even scarier. "Daddy!" Emma held out another article she'd printed. "Look at this one." It was a photo from the school science fair snapped by another parent. In it, Alice, not Alexandra Bennett, but purely Alice, was looking at Emma's solar system model with genuine joy, while Michael stood in the background, watching them both with an expression he hadn't let himself acknowledge until now. Some truths, it seemed, were visible even in newsprint. Alexandra sat in her home office, surrounded by medical research papers detailing Emma's condition. Her laptop displayed the latest trial results, each graph showing improvement that brought both professional satisfaction and personal relief. She'd barely slept since the revelation, throwing herself into ensuring the treatment's success while keeping her distance as promised. A notification popped up on her screen, another article about her miraculous return from the dead. The press was having a field day, but she'd managed to keep the Coopers out of it. Tomorrow's press conference would explain everything, or at least the version of everything that protected what mattered most. A knock at her door froze her in. In place, not the front door, where reporters still occasionally tried their luck, but the back door that led to her small garden. The security team would have stopped any threat, which meant she opened the door to find Michael and Emma standing there, the little girl clutching something in her hands. "Hi," Emma said brightly. as if the past week hadn't happened. "I made you a bracelet." Alexandra's eyes filled with tears as Emma held out the beaded creation. Each letter of Alice had been carefully chosen in different colors. I love it," she managed. "Emma wanted you to have it," Michael said quietly. "And I read your card." The card. She'd poured her heart into those words, trying to explain the unexplainable. How do you tell someone that pretending to be ordinary had made you feel more real than you'd ever been? "Would you like to come in?" she asked, then quickly added, "The security team can verify there are no press around." "Actually," Michael gestured to Emma's backpack, "we were hoping you might help us set up a certain telescope. Emma's doctor says fresh air would be good for her recovery." Alexandra's hand tightened on the doorframe. "I thought you wanted me to stay away." "I did. I was hurt and angry," and he took a deep breath, "and terrified of losing the person I thought I knew. But then I realized something. The person who graded physics tests and made my daughter laugh and ran toward danger, instead of away from it. That person is real, more real than any headline or bank account." "The telescope makes the stars look like diamonds," Emma interjected, practical as always. "Daddy says you know all about the constellations." Alexandra looked at Michael, asking the silent question. He nodded slightly. "I do know about constellations," she said, "and black holes. And I still owe you the rest of that story about what happens if you fall into one." "With the funny voices for the scientists?" Emma's eyes lit up. "With all the voices?" Alexandra found herself smiling through tears. She turned to Michael. If that's okay." He pulled something from his pocket. Her card from the hospital, well worn now as if read multiple times. "Your letter said you'd never felt more yourself than when you were being Alice. That everything except your name was real." "It was. It is." She touched the bracelet Emma had given her. "Alice is who I am when I'm not trying to be anything else." "Then maybe," he said carefully, "we could all get to know Alice better. The real Alice, with all her complicated parts." Emma had already wandered into the garden, examining potential spots for the telescope. Alexandra watched her, marveling at the child's resilience and capacity for forgiveness. "I've been researching," Michael continued, "the Independence Medical Research Trust. It's helping hundreds of families, not just us." Alexandra nodded. "It started because of Emma, but there are so many children who need help, so many treatments. That could work if someone just funded the research. See, that's the thing." He stepped closer. "Alexandra Bennett could write checks, but Alice Miller saw the real need. She volunteered, she connected, she understood. Maybe the world needs both of them." A shooting star streaked across the darkening sky, and Emma's delighted gasp drew their attention. "Did you know," Alexandra said, falling naturally into her teaching voice, "that most shooting stars are no bigger than a grain of sand? But when they hit the atmosphere at just the right angle, with just the right speed, they light up the whole sky," Emma finished, "like magic." "Like science," Michael corrected gently, but his eyes were on Alexandra. "Like two different elements coming together to create something new." She understood what he was offering. Not forgiveness exactly, but a chance to build something real from the ashes of deception. A chance to be both Alexandra and Alice, to help in ways both grand and small. "The telescope really does need at least 3 people to set up properly," she offered. "One to hold the base, one to align the scope, and one to check the star charts." "And make the funny voices," Emma added seriously. "And make the funny voices," Alexandra agreed, reaching for the box. Her hand brushed Michael's as they lifted it together, and neither pulled away. Above them, the stars emerged one by one, each a distant sun with its own story to tell. In Alexandra's garden, 3 people who had been burned by different kinds of fires began the delicate work of building something new, a telescope, a relationship, a future where truth and trust could coexist with both wealth and wisdom. Emma's bracelet caught the starlight, its beads spelling out not just a name, but a promise. The promise that sometimes the most precious discoveries come not from looking up at the stars, but from looking directly into each other's hearts. 2 tickets lay on Alexandra's kitchen counter, one for the front row of the Denver Symphony Orchestra's gala opening night, the other a general admission seat in the uppermost balcony. The contrast between them embodied everything she was struggling to reconcile in her newly integrated life. "You really don't have to come," she told Michael over coffee. They'd fallen into a morning routine. Coffee in her garden before he headed to school, while Emma chatted about constellations or immune systems or whatever had captured her curiosity that day. "I want to," he insisted, though his eyes kept drifting to the tickets. "It's important to you." What she couldn't tell him was that the gala wasn't just a concert. It was her first public appearance since revealing her identity. The press would be watching, analyzing, judging, and now they'd be judging him too. "Daddy needs a new suit," Emma announced, looking up from her astronomy homework. "His old one has chalk on it." Alexandra bit her lip. She'd noticed the worn suit, just as she'd noticed the scuffed shoes and patched jacket, but offering to buy new ones felt dangerous, a step too far into the territory that made Michael uncomfortable. "I can handle a suit," he said firmly, reading her expression. "I'm not completely helpless." "I never thought you were." She reached for his hand across the table. "That's not why Her phone buzzed. "Marcus, board members requesting urgent meeting. Questions about your public image, relationship status, company direction." Michael saw the message before she could hide it. His face closed off slightly. "Relationship status? It's nothing," she said quickly. "Just corporate politics." "Is that what I am? Corporate politics?" "No." The force of her response startled them both. You're the realest thing in my life." Emma looked between them, sensing tension. "Can I wear my space dress to the concert?" The innocent question broke the moment. Alexandra smiled. "Of course you can, Starshine, and maybe we could find your dad a tie to match." "With planets on it?" Emma's eyes lit up. "A regular tie is fine," Michael cut in. "Really?" But Alexandra had seen the way his eyes softened at Emma's excitement. This was the delicate balance they were trying to strike, between his pride and her resources, between their different worlds. Later that evening, as they set up the telescope for their nightly stargazing session, the issue resurfaced. "The board of directors," Michael said carefully, adjusting the lens. "They're not happy about you dating a teacher, are they?" Alexandra's hands stilled on the star chart. "They're not happy about anything that doesn't fit their narrative, but they don't control my life anymore. Don't they? Your company, your foundation, all the good you're doing with medical research. And doesn't it depend on their support? Let me worry about that. How can I not worry?" He straightened to face her. "Every time we go out, someone takes pictures. Every restaurant, every park visit. Yesterday's headline, Billionaire's New Beau, Simple Teacher or Social Climber. Since when do you read those tabloids?" "Since my students started bringing them to class." His voice was tight. "They ask if I'm going to quit teaching now, if we're moving to a mansion, if Emma's going to a private school in Switzerland." Alexandra felt the familiar weight of her wealth like a wall between them. "What do you tell them?" "The truth. That I love my job, our home, our life. That money doesn't change who we are." He paused. "But sometimes I wonder, does it have to change who you are? All those meetings, galas, board presentations. Is Alice disappearing back into Alexandra Bennett?" She stepped closer to him, moonlight silvering his worried face. "Do you know why I fell in love with physics before business? Because in physics, two opposite things can be simultaneously true. A particle can be a wave. Light can be both energy and matter, and you can be both Alice and Alexandra. I can be myself, all of myself." She touched his cheek. "Just like you can be both a dedicated teacher and the kind of man who belongs at any gala in the world." Emma's voice drifted down from her bedroom window. "Are you guys going to look at stars or just talk all night?" They both laughed, tension broken. Michael called back, 5 minutes, sunshine." Alexandra picked up the concert tickets. What What if we didn't use either of these? What if we found something new, something that belongs to all of us? He raised an eyebrow. What did you have in mind? The planetarium is premiering a new show about black holes. Front row seats are just as good as the back, because you're lying down looking up, she smiled. And Emma can definitely wear her space dress. Michael's face softened. Now that sounds like both Alice and Alexandra talking. Is that okay? He pulled her close, his voice rough with emotion. It's perfect, because both of them are you, and you're who I... He stopped, not quite ready to say the words. Look, Emma called down, a satellite! They turned their faces to the sky, watching the small point of light move across the stars. Human technology against the backdrop of eternal cosmos. Two worlds, existing together in perfect harmony, just like them. The simple meal laid out on Alexandra's kitchen counter told its own story. Store-bought pasta, sauce from a jar, garlic bread that Emma had helped butter. Not the kind of dinner Alexandra Bennett would have served at a corporate function, but exactly what Alice Miller would make for a family night. You really didn't have to cook, Michael said, watching her struggle with the pasta strainer. Bold of you to call this cooking, she laughed, nearly dropping the pot. But I wanted to try. The internet said this was foolproof. The internet lied. He moved behind her, steadying her hands on the strainer. Here, like this. Emma sat at the counter, drawing planets in her science notebook and pretending not to notice the way her father and Alexandra moved together in the kitchen. Did you know that pasta was invented in China, not Italy? We learned that in social studies. Speaking of social studies, Alexandra said carefully, how would you feel about missing a few days of school next week? Michael looked up from the sauce he was rescuing. Oh? Bennett Biotech is opening a new research facility in Colorado Springs. They're dedicating the pediatric wing to studying autoimmune conditions. She stirred the pasta nervously. I thought, maybe you both might. Want to come see what your treatment helped create? The silence that followed felt heavy with meaning. This would be their first public appearance together, not just as a couple, but as a family. Will there be microscopes? Emma asked, breaking the tension. The most advanced ones in the country, Alexandra smiled, and a special room just for young researchers like you. Michael added the garlic bread to a plate, buying time to think. The press will be there. Yes, Alexandra faced him directly. But not because I'm Alexandra Bennett, billionaire. Because I'm Alexandra Bennett, who nearly died in a house fire and came back determined to make a difference. Because I met a physics teacher and his brilliant daughter who showed me what really matters. Is that the official story? It's the true story. She touched his arm. Just simplified for public consumption. Emma closed her notebook decisively. I want to go. I want to see where they make the medicine that fixed my cells. Michael looked at his daughter, really looked at her. Healthy, happy, excited about science in a way that went beyond just stars now. All because Alexandra had dared to be both versions of herself. Okay, he said finally, but I'm wearing my planet tie. Alexandra's face lit up. Really? Well, Emma's not the only one who can make a fashion statement. They sat down to their slightly overcooked pasta, and Alexandra watched as Michael and Emma performed their familiar dinner ritual, sharing the best and hardest parts of their day. She'd seen this so many times as Alice, but now she could fully participate. Best part, Emma declared, was when Jenny said she's going to study medicine because of my story. Hardest part was not telling her about the new research center yet. Best part, Michael added, was seeing my students actually excited about gravitational physics. Hardest part, he smiled at Alexandra, was keeping this brilliant, beautiful woman a secret from my colleagues who think I'm still just grading papers every night. Alexandra felt tears threatening. Best part was this moment right here. Hardest part, she took a deep breath, is being afraid it can't last. That my world will somehow ruin this. Your world. Emma looked confused. But you're here. This is your world, out of the mouths of babes. Michael reached for Alexandra's hand. Emma's right. This isn't your world or my world anymore. It's ours. All of it. Even the boring board meetings, Alexandra tried to joke. Even those, because they're part of who you are, and who you are is... He paused, then finally said it. Who you are is who I love. Emma dropped her fork with a clatter. Finally. Ms. Chen owes me $5. What? Both adults turned to her. She said it would take another week for Daddy to say it out loud. I said he'd do it over pasta because that's when Mum always said he was the most romantic. The mention of Sarah would once have frozen the moment. But somehow, here in this kitchen with slightly burnt garlic bread and overcooked pasta, it felt right. An acknowledgement that love doesn't replace what was lost, but builds something new beside it. Your mother was a very wise woman, Alexandra said softly. She would have liked you, Emma said matter-of-factly. Both versions of you. Michael squeezed Alexandra's hand. She's right about that too. Later, after Emma had gone to bed, they stood in Alexandra's kitchen washing dishes, another simple task she was determined to master. You know, Michael said, handing her a plate to dry, when I ran into that burning house, I thought I was saving someone. I had no idea I was being saved too. Alexandra looked at him questioningly. From loneliness, he explained. From being stuck in my own small world. From being afraid to love again. She put down the dish towel and turned to face him. When I created Alice Miller, I thought I was escaping. I had no idea I was finally finding my way home. The kitchen was quiet except for the soft hum of the dishwasher, a mundane sound that somehow meant everything. Here they were, a billionaire and a physics teacher, doing dishes and building a life that bridged their worlds. So, Alexandra said, trying to keep her voice light, about that research center opening? Yes, I'll wear a suit. He pulled her close. Yes, Emma can wear her space dress. Yes, we'll stand with you at the podium. And yes, I'll still grade papers in the evening and make bad jokes about physics. Promise? Promise. Because that's who I am. Just like you're both the woman who saves lives with medical research and the one who can't quite cook pasta. She laughed against his chest. I'll get better at the pasta, and I'll get better at the galas. Above them, through the kitchen, skylight stars twinkled, distant suns holding their own worlds together with gravity and light, just like love. The paparazzi photos spread across Alexandra's desk told a story she hadn't meant to share yet. Michael helping Emma out of his old Honda, while Alexandra held an umbrella over them, the three of them getting ice cream at their favorite local shop, a stolen kiss in the school parking lot. The headlines ranged from saccharine, billionaire's fairy tale, the teacher who saved her life, to suspicious, gold digger or true love. The truth about Bennett's mystery man. We can contain this, Marcus said, pacing her office. Issue a statement. Control the narrative. Alexandra touched one of the photos. Emma showing her a perfect science test, both their faces lit with genuine joy. Maybe it's time to stop containing and controlling. The board meeting is in an hour. They'll want answers. Then I'll give them answers. She stood, smoothing her blazer. But first, I need to talk to Michael. She found him in his classroom, explaining gravity to fascinated freshmen. Several students had the tabloid photos poorly hidden under their textbooks. One girl was wearing a Team Cooper t-shirt. Miss Bennett, a student called out as she entered, are you here to teach us about corporate physics? Michael turned, his professional demeanor slipping just enough to show his concern. Class dismissed. Read chapter 7 for tomorrow. As students filed out, many staring and whispering, Alexandra held up the photos. I'm sorry, someone must have been following us for weeks. I knew it would happen eventually. He perched on his desk, looking tired. The principal called this morning. Apparently I'm now a distraction to the learning environment. Michael, 3 parents have complained that I'm not qualified to teach their kids anymore. Because, obviously, dating a billionaire means I've forgotten physics. His laugh was bitter. One suggested I'm only keeping this job as a cover story. Alexandra felt sick. This was exactly what she'd feared, her world tainting his. I can talk to the school board. With money? That's not the answer, Alexandra. Then what is? She moved closer, needing him to understand. I won't let them hurt your career over this. My career is fine. I'm more worried about Emma, the other kids, the questions. She had a panic attack in the cafeteria today. Alexandra's heart clenched. What do you need me to do? I don't know. He ran a hand through his hair. I don't know how to protect her from this. From becoming a story people think they have a right to tell. A knock interrupted them. Emma stood in the doorway with her school counselor, eyes red, but chin lifted bravely. Sorry, the counselor said. She wanted to see you both. Emma walked straight to Alexandra. Jenny's mum says you're only pretending to like us because of publicity. That's not true, right? Oh, Starshine. Alexandra knelt to Emma's level. Nothing about how I feel for you and your dad is pretend. Remember what we learned about stars, how they look bright and simple from far away, but when you really study them, they're complex and beautiful and real. Emma nodded slowly. That's like us. People far away might see a simple story, but we know the truth, all the complex, beautiful, real parts of it. The kids at school want to know if we're moving to a mansion, Emma said quietly. If I'm getting a pony. If you're going to be my new mum. Michael made a pained sound, but Alexandra kept her focus on Emma. What do you want to tell them? Emma considered this seriously. That we already have a perfect house. That I like telescopes better than ponies. And that, she glanced at her father, then back to Alexandra. And that sometimes families grow in ways nobody expects, like how the universe is always expanding. Alexandra felt tears threatening, this remarkable child, handling adult complexities with such grace. Miss Bennett? The counselor stepped forward. The press is gathering outside the school. We've called security, but Alexandra stood. Decision made. No more hiding. No more controlling the narrative. She looked at Michael. If you're willing, I'd like to tell our story. The real story. Not the fairy tale they want to sell. All of it? His eyes searched hers. The fire, the deception, the truth. All of it. How I had to lose everything to find what really mattered. How a physics teacher and his brilliant daughter taught me more about gravity than any textbook. The force that pulls hearts together, that builds new worlds from scattered stars. Emma tugged at both their hands. Can I help tell it? I have graphs showing my immune system numbers. Very scientific. Michael laughed despite himself. Of course you do. So? Alexandra asked softly. Are we doing this together? Michael looked at his daughter, then at the woman he loved, both versions of her. Together, but I have one condition. Anything. We tell it here. Not at some press conference or corporate event. Here, where I teach about forces and motion. Where Emma learned to love science. Where you volunteered just to be close to us. Perfect. Alexandra squeezed his hand. Because that's where our story really started. Not with the fire, but with physics and telescopes and overcooked pasta and love that defies every law except gravity. Emma pulled out her science notebook. I'll get my graphs. Through the classroom windows, they could see reporters gathering. But for the first time, Alexandra felt no need to hide or control or manage. Let them see. Let them all see what happens when two different worlds collide and create something new, something real, something as infinite as the stars themselves. Michael's resignation letter sat unsigned on his desk, the official school letterhead stark against the scattered student papers and astronomy diagrams. He'd written it 3 times now, each version trying to explain an impossible choice. How? To balance his love of teaching with protecting his daughter's privacy and supporting the woman he loved. Mr. Cooper. His department head stood in the doorway. The Board of Trustees is requesting your presence. He nodded, already knowing what was coming. Since their public revelation last week, the school had been overwhelmed with media attention. Camera crews disrupted classes. Reporters posed as substitute teachers, and parents either wanted their children exclusively in or out of his class. In the empty classroom, Emma's latest astronomy project still hung on the wall, a detailed chart showing the life cycle of stars, with a personal note, Sometimes the biggest changes make the brightest light. The board meeting was exactly what he expected. Concerned faces, carefully worded suggestions about taking some time off, and thinly veiled implications about his changing social status. "We value your contributions," the chairman said, "but perhaps this is an opportunity to explore other options." Michael placed his resignation letter on the table. "I wrote this last night, but before I sign it, I'd like you to hear something." He pulled out his phone, playing a voicemail from a former student. "Mr. Cooper, I just got accepted to MIT's physics program. Remember when you said that understanding gravity meant understanding that the smallest forces can hold the biggest things together? That's how I explained quantum entanglement in my application essay. You taught me that science isn't just about formulas. It's about seeing the wonder in how things work. Please don't let them make you quit." More messages followed. Students describing how his classes had changed their lives, parents thanking him for inspiring their children, colleagues defending his dedication to teaching. "I love this job," he said simply, "not for the salary or the status, but because every day I get to show young minds how magnificent the universe is. How the same forces that hold planets in orbit also hold atoms together. How understanding. These principles helps us understand ourselves." The chairman shifted uncomfortably. "No one questions your teaching ability, but the publicity is an opportunity," a new voice said from the doorway. Alexandra stood there, not in her usual corporate attire, but dressed as Alice Miller, volunteer physics assistant. "If you'll let me explain." She laid out a proposal, a new science wing funded by Bennett Biotech, featuring state-of-the-art labs and a research partnership program. Not a donation to buy influence, but an investment in education that would benefit thousands of students. "Michael wouldn't run it," she added quickly, seeing their eager expressions. "He belongs in the classroom, doing what he does best. This isn't about money or influence, it's about taking something challenging, like unexpected love or unwanted publicity, and transforming it into something beneficial for everyone." The board members exchanged glances. Finally, the chairman spoke. "The publicity would be excellent. The education would be better," Michael corrected firmly. "Think of how many students could benefit from advanced research opportunities, real-world applications of the principles we teach." Emma's project caught Alexandra's eye. She walked over to it, touching the careful illustrations. "My company's latest breakthrough came from understanding how stars forge elements in their cores. The same process that lights up the galaxy also helps us understand autoimmune conditions. Everything connects. Science, healing, learning, love. Why shouldn't our personal story help light the way for others?" The chairman picked up Michael's resignation letter, still unsigned. "Perhaps we've been looking at this situation too narrowly." Later, in the empty classroom, Michael found Alexandra studying Emma's star chart. "You didn't have to do that," he said softly. "Yes, I did." She turned to face him. "Because you didn't have to run into that fire, but you did. You didn't have to open your heart to a woman who lied about her identity, but you did. You don't have to keep teaching when you could live comfortably without working, but you do, because it's who you are." He pulled her close. "And you didn't have to choose a complicated life with a physics teacher and his daughter when you could have returned to your billionaire bubble." "Yes, I did," she repeated, "because this is who I am, both the woman who can fund research laboratories and the one who gets excited about student science projects. Just like you're both the hero who runs into fires and the teacher who makes physics magical for teenagers." The unsigned resignation letter lay forgotten as they stood together, surrounded by the simple tools of teaching, worn textbooks, star charts, and the everyday magic of learning. Through the window, they could see Emma getting off her bus, head high, despite the lingering photographers. "She's so strong," Alexandra murmured. "Like her mother," Michael said softly. Then, watching Emma wave away a reporter with a polite but firm grace, he added, like both her mothers. Alexandra's breath caught. Michael, Sarah will always be her mom, he said, but you're becoming something just as important, something uniquely yours, like a new kind of star being born. Emma burst into the classroom, brandishing a paper. I got an A on my presentation about immune systems. And I only made 3 people cry when I talked about how love is like a really good medicine. They laughed, pulling her into their embrace. Outside, cameras might be flashing, capturing the moment for tomorrow's papers. But in here, in this classroom where physics met fate, 3 people held onto each other with the same force that kept the galaxies spinning: gravity, grace, and love beyond measure. The blueprints spread across their kitchen table showed more than just architectural plans. They revealed the careful compromise between 2 worlds. The modest ranch house would keep its original footprint, but with subtle upgrades, a state-of-the-art home observatory in the backyard, a modernized kitchen where Alexandra could continue her culinary experiments, and a dedicated space for Emma's growing collection of scientific equipment. No pool, Emma asked, studying the plans. No pool, Alexandra confirmed. But look here. She pointed to a section of the backyard. A greenhouse for growing your own experimental garden. Much more scientific. Michael watched them bent over the blueprints, still amazed at how naturally they fit together. The past week had been a whirlwind of decisions and adjustments. The school board had not only accepted Alexandra's proposal, but expanded on it, creating a STEM initiative that would benefit schools across the district. What about your house? Emma asked Alexandra. The one where the fire was. I thought we could donate it, Alexandra said, glancing at Michael. Turn it into transitional housing for families with children in long-term medical care. Give them a home base during treatments. Michael took her hand under the table, understanding everything she wasn't saying. The house where they'd first met would become a place of healing for others, a perfect symmetry. The contractors can start next week, Alexandra continued, turning a page in the plans. We'll barely have to move anything, just some reinforcement for the telescope mount, updating the electrical system. And my lab, Emma interjected. Don't forget my lab. The lab was actually a converted sunroom, designed to house Emma's growing interest in both astronomy and immunology. Alexandra had worked with her medical research team to create child-sized but fully functional equipment, turning Emma's curiosity into genuine scientific exploration. The press will be disappointed, Michael noted dryly. They were expecting us to build a mansion. Let them be disappointed. Alexandra smiled. This is our home. We're just making it work better for all of us. Emma traced the greenhouse outline with her finger. Can I grow the same plants they use in my medicine? Ms. Martinez says some treatments come from special flowers. Actually, Alexandra shared a look with Michael, I was thinking we could work with your science class on that. Turn it into a real research project. Show other kids how nature and science work together. The doorbell rang, probably Karen, who'd appointed herself unofficial coordinator of the neighborhood's response to the media attention. She'd organized a rotation of people bringing meals, running interference with reporters, and generally creating a protective bubble around their family. But it wasn't Karen at the door. It was Sarah's parents, Emma's other grandparents. We saw the news, Sarah's mother said quietly. We needed to see for ourselves. Michael felt Alexandra start to step back, giving them space, but he held her hand firmly. Come in. There's someone you should meet. The next hour was a delicate dance of past and present. Sarah's parents asked careful questions, watched Alexandra with Emma, studied the ways their granddaughter had blossomed under this unexpected new love. Sarah always said you needed someone who understood stars, her father finally said to Michael. Who knew it would be someone who fell from them? Emma proudly showed them her latest projects, the blueprints, her medical charts showing her recovery. Sarah's mother cried when she saw the photo of Emma and Alexandra at the telescope, their expressions mirror images of scientific wonder. Sarah would be happy, she told Michael as they left. Not replaced, never replaced, but continued somehow. In a new way. After they'd gone, Alexandra stood in the backyard, looking up at the stars. Michael found her there, wrapping his arms around her from behind. "You okay?" "Just thinking about gravity," she murmured. "How it never really lets go of anything, just transforms it, reshapes it into something new. Is that your way of saying you're nervous about moving in?" She turned in his arms. "Not nervous, just aware of all the forces at work, the past, the present, the future we're building. Very scientific of you." "Well, I am engaged to a physics teacher." They both froze. She hadn't meant to say it like that, hadn't meant to say it at all yet, but there it was, hanging between them like a new constellation, waiting to be named. "Are you?" Michael's voice was rough with emotion. "Engaged to a physics teacher?" Alexandra touched his face. "Only if the physics teacher wants to be engaged to someone who burns pasta, funds medical research, and loves his daughter almost as much as she loves him." Almost? Well, Emma's pretty special. From inside, they heard a crash, followed by Emma's voice. "I'm okay." The molecular model was just too excited about cellular fusion. They laughed, the moment transforming from weight to lightness, just like every force in their lives seemed to do. "So," Alexandra said softly, "about that engagement." Michael kissed her under the stars they'd spent so many nights studying together. "I think Emma's going to need a very scientific graph to track all the wedding preparations." "Is that a yes?" "That's the force of my love for you could move planets." Inside, Emma was already plotting something on one of her charts, as if she'd known all along where this night was heading. Perhaps she had. After all, she was the one who'd taught them both that the best discoveries come from paying attention to the heart's own gravity. The adoption papers lay on Alexandra's home office desk, deceptively simple for documents that held such profound meaning. She'd had her legal team draft them carefully, not to replace Emma's birth mother, but to legally recognize what her heart already knew. This brilliant child had become her daughter too. "Are you sure about this?" Michael asked from the doorway. "Once we filed these—" "I've never been more sure of anything," Alexandra replied, but her hand trembled slightly as she reached for her pen. "It's Emma's choice, though. We don't show her unless she's ready." As if summoned by her name, Emma burst into the office, clutching her latest immune system readings. "Look, Dr. Chen says I'm making new antibodies exactly like we predicted. The treatment is actually teaching my body new things." Alexandra quickly slipped the adoption papers into a drawer, but not before Emma caught a glimpse of them. The girl went very still, her medical chart forgotten. Were those about me?" Michael and Alexandra exchanged glances. This wasn't how they'd planned to have this conversation, but then again, nothing about their family had followed a conventional plan. "Yes, Starshine," Alexandra said softly. "They're papers that would make me legally your parent too. But only if that's something you want. Your mom will always be your mom. I would never try to—" "Can I see them?" The simple request held such weight. Alexandra opened the drawer with trembling fingers, laying the papers on her desk. Emma approached them the way she did all her scientific observations, with careful attention to detail. "These mean you'd be my mom too, legally, only if—" "You want that?" Michael said quickly. "There's no pressure, honey." Emma traced the letters of her name on the document. "When Mom died, I asked you if my heart would ever feel full again. Remember?" Michael's voice was rough. "I remember. You said love isn't like a cup that gets empty. It's like the universe, always expanding, making room for more." She looked up at Alexandra. "Is that what these papers mean, that our universe is expanding?" Alexandra knelt beside Emma's chair. "That's exactly what they mean. Your mom will always be the bright star at the center of your galaxy. I'd just be another star, adding my light to yours." Emma was quiet for a long moment, her scientist's mind clearly processing this new data. Then she reached for Alexandra's fancy fountain pen. "Where do I sign?" "Emma," Michael started, "you don't have to decide right now. This is a big—" "Dad," Emma interrupted with the patience of someone explaining basic math to a kindergartner. I decided ages ago, back when Alexandra helped me understand why my cells get confused sometimes. She didn't just explain the medicine. She showed me how to not be scared of my own body. That's what moms do, right? Help you not be scared. Alexandra couldn't speak past the lump in her throat. She watched as Emma carefully signed her name on the indicated line, her handwriting a mix of childish curves and scientific precision. There, Emma said decisively. Now we just need a good hypothesis for the wedding. I'm thinking something about the gravitational forces of 3 celestial bodies finding equilibrium. Michael laughed, the sound suspiciously watery. Of course you are. And we should definitely incorporate the golden ratio into the seating chart, and maybe demonstrate electron bonding with the unity ceremony. How about we start with filing these papers? Alexandra suggested, her own voice none too steady. Emma grabbed her medical charts again, suddenly remembering her original excitement. Oh yes, look at these numbers. It's like my whole body is learning a new dance, but with proteins instead of music. As she launched into a detailed explanation of her latest test results, Alexandra felt Michael's hand slip into hers. They watched their daughter, explain complex medical concepts with the same enthusiasm other kids reserved for video games. Later that night, after Emma had finally run out of scientific metaphors and gone to bed, Alexandra found Michael in the backyard observatory, adjusting the telescope. Second thoughts, she asked softly. About the adoption? No. He stepped back from the telescope. I was just thinking about that night. The fire, the smoke, running in without. Thinking? I thought I was saving you, but really, we were saving each other, she finished. And now we're building something new. Something that doesn't deny the past, but grows from it. Like stellar formation. Emma's rubbing off on you, she laughed. On all of us. He pulled her close. Thank you for loving her, for understanding that she needs both her mothers, the one watching from the stars and the one teaching her about them. Above them, the night sky wheeled in its eternal dance, each star a point of light in the darkness. Somewhere up there, Alexandra thought, Sarah was watching her daughter bloom, watching love expand like the universe itself, infinite, beautiful, and ever-growing. The adoption papers would be filed tomorrow, making official what their hearts had known for months. But the real miracle had already happened. 3 souls finding each other in the vast cosmos, creating their own constellation of love, science, and family. Just like Emma's beloved stars, they had forged something new from the elements of their past, proving that the most powerful force in the universe isn't gravity after all. It's love. 1 year later, a family photo sat framed on the mantel of their renovated home, Michael, Alexandra, and Emma standing in front of the rebuilt house where their story began. The image captured exactly what Alexandra had once thought impossible: genuine joy, unposed and perfect. Mom, Dad, the new immunology results are in. Emma's voice carried from her greenhouse laboratory, where she'd been conducting her award-winning science fair project on plant-based medicine. Alexandra still felt a warm glow every time Emma called her Mom. It wasn't a replacement of Sarah's memory, but an expansion of love, just as Emma had predicted. She found Michael already heading toward the greenhouse, his teacher's curiosity, as strong as their daughter's scientific enthusiasm. The greenhouse had become Emma's domain, a perfect fusion of their worlds. State-of-the-art equipment nestled among flourishing medicinal plants, while her original hand-drawn star charts shared wall space with professional medical diagrams. Look, Emma pointed to her laptop screen. The compounds we isolated from the herbs are showing exactly the pattern we hypothesized. Michael peered at the data, just like your immune system last year, learning new dances. Better. Emma could barely contain her excitement. The university research team wants to include my findings in their next paper, a real scientific publication. Alexandra watched her family huddle over the computer, their heads bent together in identical poses of concentration. Through the greenhouse glass, she could see the observatory dome gleaming in the setting sun. Another dream realized, another bridge between their worlds. The media frenzy had long since died down, replaced by occasional human interest stories about their educational initiatives and medical research programs. The physics teacher who ran into a fire had become known instead for revolutionizing STEM education in underfunded schools. The billionaire who faked her death was now celebrated for transforming pediatric medical research. But their real story wasn't in the headlines. It was here, in moments like this, Emma explaining complex biochemistry while wearing her favorite space-themed lab coat, Michael interjecting with physics principles that somehow perfectly applied to cellular biology, Alexandra contributing insights from her pharmaceutical research while burning yet another attempt at dinner in their upgraded kitchen. "We should celebrate," Michael suggested. "Maybe that new restaurant?" "Or," Emma interrupted with a sly smile, "we could have pasta night." Alexandra groaned. "I've gotten better." "Of course you have, honey." Michael kissed her cheek. "But maybe tonight we just order in and look at the stars instead." The observatory had become their family's sanctuary. Emma had mapped the exact spot in the sky where the smoke from that fateful fire had first risen, their own personal constellation marking where their story began. Later that night, as they lay on the observatory's viewing platform, Emma pointed out the familiar patterns they'd studied together all year. "Did you know," she said sleepily, "that it takes years for a star's light to reach Earth? So when we look up, we're actually seeing the past and present at the same time?" Alexandra squeezed Michael's hand in the darkness, like those ancient stars. Sarah's light still reached them, blessing this new family that had formed in her absence. And like the universe itself, their love had proven Emma's hypothesis. There was always room for expansion, for new connections, for light to shine. Alongside light, "I have a new theory," Emma announced, fighting off sleep, "about why you ran into the fire that night, Dad." "Oh?" Michael pulled her closer. "It wasn't just gravity or heroism or even chance. It was quantum entanglement. Two particles that seem separate but are actually connected across any distance. You and Mom were entangled before you even knew it. The fire just made it visible." Alexandra felt tears in her eyes. "That's beautiful, Starshine." "It's science," Emma corrected, finally drifting off to sleep between them. Above them, the stars wheeled in their ancient paths, while in the greenhouse below, new medicines grew. From Emma's experiments, the house around them held both memories and promises. Sarah's photographs sharing space with new family portraits, Emma's childhood artwork displayed alongside her scientific achievements, Alexandra's business awards, next to Michael's teaching commendations. "Quantum entanglement," Michael mused softly, careful not to wake Emma. "Leave it to our daughter to find the perfect scientific principle for love." "Our daughter," Alexandra echoed, the words still feeling like a miracle.